You're listening to Inspire Change, a broadcast that strives to educate, motivate, and empower men to challenge traditions of masculinity. To guide us through the intricacies and intersections of emotions, relationships, and male identity is renowned psychologist, author, and speaker Gunter. This is Inspire Change.
I want to introduce a tradition here for this podcast and all future podcasts, wherein I'd like to respectfully acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. They are the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet. I pay my respects to the elders, past and present. Knowing the stories of the Aboriginal people will always be written in this landscape. Welcome everybody to another episode of Inspired Change. So let me ask you a question out there. Imagine you've got a young teenager and they come home and they start talking about and describing some of the people that they're hanging out with. Some of which might be their peers, some of which are older, but fundamentally they speak in terms that raise some red flags for you. You're very concerned about that. Now, how would you deal with that situation? Now, obviously, once upon a time, we would keep an eye on the neighbourhood and go, check out this person who's come into the neighbourhood. And we would sort of make an assessment about whether we would like our kids to hang out with that family or that individual or those kids. You know, the old saying is, you become the company that you keep. So here's the fundamental question. We used to do that, but do we still do that now in the digital age? And to be frank, I think we are not doing it, at least not in most cases. All of those of you who are parents out there, can you clearly describe to me what your teenager is watching, listening and reading on the internet? Do you know what they're being exposed to? Now, obviously, there are some groups who are heavily into burning books, who want books to be censored, who want movies to be censored, and who really are pushing for a particular type of ideological line. Now, what if I said to you that many of our young teenagers, especially boys, are being groomed and indoctrinated into an ideology that fundamentally objectifies and believes that 52% of the population is not equal to them, that they're inferior, and that there are certain rules that this inferior group needs to adhere to. Now, I suspect that most parents out there who were to really think about this would go, that's terrible, that's horrific. Who is it? Are they Islamists? Are they fundamentalist cults of any religion? Who are they? Now, I'm going to give you a very clear outline of some of the people who I'm talking about and who I have to deal with inadvertently, vicariously with the boys, the teenagers that I see. And they're groups like the incels, the pickup artists, the male influencers on the internet that purport that men fundamentally are a victim of being marginalised and isolated and alienated from their community, and who are fundamentally victims of the encompassing egalitarian idea of feminism. Right? So it's a really interesting spin. And these influencers market themselves as having discovered the truth of tapping into real masculinity, the hard stuff. They wear big shades, smoke heavy cigars, wear leather and T-shirts. And don't get me wrong, I'm not against wearing a leather jacket. I quite like that myself. But it's the pose, the body language that they bring to the table with that. Now, if you're a, 13, 14-year-old who's having a bit of a hard time in the schoolyard because you might be a little bit smaller than the rest of the guys, doesn't feel really good. There's some of the bigger guys there who, are putting you in your place from time to time. You're going to be looking for some way to level the playing field. And so the messages that these, in inverted commas, alpha male influences bring to the table is particularly seductive. It sounds great. How to become an alpha male. How to get really successful with girls. How to let girls not shit on you, as one kid put it to me. So, as I said, if I was feeling a little isolated and a little put on and definitely looking to up my game, some of this stuff is really, really seductive. I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to it. Can I get in on the game, as it were, as a lot of pickup artists talk about. So there are particular men out there, unfortunately, who have learnt that this is a huge marketplace and they can make squillions of dollars off this. One of the more, and I hate to say it, but in some ways more benign characters in this arena is Jordan Peterson. At least there are some things that he says that have merit. But there are other people who are completely unscrupulous, who sound reasonable until up to a point, and who draw young teenage boys and young men to them like moths to a flame. Now, just like moths to a flame, at some point they crash and burn. Because what these guys are promoting is the very stuff that is toxic. It's the very stuff of toxic patriarchy. And the idea, the message is that you need to put a stake in the ground and claim what's rightfully yours, and that includes, all that money, all the possessions that you want, all the prestige and power that you want, and that includes women. Okay, so let me put a name to this abomination. And one of them is a guy called Andrew Tate. Now, The Observer wrote an interesting article, a woman called Shanti Das, and it's titled Inside the Violent, Misogynistic World of TikTok's New Star, Andrew Tate. So don't get me started on TikTok. I'll do something else on that at some other point. But they've been letting this guy run rampant with a message that is at best hateful and at worst potentially can kill people. And I'm not making light of this, and I'm not being histrionic about it. We know from a lot of the sort of school serial shootings and stuff in the United States, many of these young men have been seduced into the alt-right, into the toxic patriarchy, and their hatred and rage towards society, especially women, knows no bounds. So nothing better than an AR-15 or 16 or whatever model you want to play with to level the playing field. Now, it doesn't matter that you're more than likely going to die as a result of those actions that you take. So let me talk a little bit about who this character is, Andrew Tate. And fundamentally, he's a guy that came to prominence some years ago. He's an English-American, British-American kickboxer. Loves fast cars, guns, portrays himself as a cigar-smoking playboy. And he freely and openly admits to his attitude about women. He makes no bones about it. So he's allowed to have affairs, but she's not. So he refers to women as dumb hoes. So he, at this time, has been banned, fortunately, from a lot of social media platforms. And he's gone on a sort of whinging tour about, how this is terrible and how he's such a victim, and doesn't take any responsibility for what he says or how he says it. He just says, I'll call it as it is. Obviously, there's a couple of features that when I've listened to this man speak, and I've gone through quite a bit of it, is that he has an attitude towards women that is purely territorial. That are his possessions to do with what he fundamentally wants. He shows no empathy. He's got an exaggerated sense of himself. And fundamentally, he talks about being a self-made man, and, I have no doubt that he was really good at being a kickboxer, because this guy comes in with an attitude that basically goes, take no prisoners. Okay? And I think he applies that to most things in life. So he also hangs with people that are of the same ilk. Brian, Farange, Nigel, sorry, not Brian, I'm not sure where that one came from, and other people in that group. So we're talking about antiquated ideology, stuff that should really be relegated to the backlot. Now, he's actually also gotten himself into some fairly serious trouble. Apart from the fact that he got booted off Big Brother for essentially, whipping one of the female contestants. So, we're not talking about a nice human being. So in 2016, he was a guest on the 17th season of Big Brother, and he came under scrutiny because he expressed extremely homophobic and racist comments on Twitter. All right. Now, that was one part. The other part of it is when you look at his personal website, it offers training courses on getting rich and male-female interactions. Now, keep in mind what I've been talking about. This man doesn't see women as equal human beings. He sees them for either pleasure or some form of usefulness. Oh, interesting Freudian slip. I mean, in his world, I would suspect that he would think most women are useless, other than serving him and his inflated ego. So one of the things that Wikipedia pointed out was that Tate and his brother started a webcam business in Romania using webcam girls to sell sob stories to desperate men, quote unquote. Now, according to Wikipedia, they've also admitted that their business model is a total scam. In other words, he set up a pyramid scheme. One of the big issues is that he's also under scrutiny for essentially questionable practices such as rape and human trafficking, right? So again, I come back to this thing. This man is not nice. He's not a pleasant human being. He's not an ethical or a moral human being. He's someone who's extraordinarily flawed psychologically. Now, some people might argue that. No, he's an alpha male. He just grabs what he wants. And he teaches other people how to do the same. So let me come back to the original question to the parents. How many of you are aware of whether your teenager is listening to this guy who's, and they might have subscribed to him in some way. I'm sure he's going to pop up in the dark web, whatever, Reddit, all that sort of stuff. Now, I sure as hell wouldn't want my teenagers to be groomed by people like that. Doesn't matter whether they're incels, pickup artists, the likes of Andrew Tate, and to some degree including Jordan Peterson. Because their ethic is flawed. There is, in fact, in a sense, no ethic other than individualism that comes at the price of others. So my critique of Andrew Tate is that he has no empathy. He plays the victim card. He argues that men are invisible other than him and some of the people like him, and that he needs to teach men how to become less invisible, that it's all about prestige, and that his underlying driver is the exceptionalness of being male. It's the patriarchy. Men are better than women. So we should really be paying attention a lot more to the company that our teenagers keep on the web. We wouldn't let this guy through the door if he turned up with my teenager, smoking a cigar behind a pair of shades and talking shit, basically. So again, let me encourage you to vet, to some degree, with some good, meaningful conversations, what your teenager is getting exposed to on the internet. Because we worry about pedophiles, and rightly so. We worry about people being groomed into inappropriate sexual activity. But we're not really paying attention to those who purport political ideologies and social ideologies that are fundamentally archaic. And it doesn't matter whether they come out of the religious arena or whether they come out of the political arena, have no place in the 21st century. So please think about it. If your teen is listening to Andrew Tate and rolling those stories out to you about, this is what he says about women and blah, 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 it's time to sit down and debrief your teenager. Come back to the fundamental values that should be driving our society, which is love, respect, cooperation, integrity, and equality. Until next time, this is me signing off. Take care.
Thank you for listening to Inspire Change, a broadcast that strives to educate, motivate, and empower men to challenge traditions of masculinity. For more information on the Making Good Men Great movement, or for individual or group coaching sessions with Gunter, visit makinggoodmengreat.com. For inquiries regarding broadcast topics or appearing on the show, email Miranda at noirtainment.com. That's Miranda at noirtainment.com.